Why? I said wake up, motherfucker.
Heyo, Ian here for Sleep Deprivation, the Big SD, back with more World of Warcraft content and another one of my Classic WoW class guides designed to help you pick the right class for Classic WoW because I'm a classy guy. In the event that you're not familiar with the series, what I do is I go through each one of the classes one by one, talk about the good things and the bad things to ultimately tell you why you should, or in some cases shouldn't, play a particular class. If you missed a class I've already covered, fear not, because I'll be leaving a link to the full playlist at the end of this video as well as in the description below. But with that being said, we move on with today's class, the Priest. We've already gone with the mages, so next step in the Clothies is obviously this little healing bastard you see right here. And as per usual, we're going to be breaking it down into 4 major categories. What you can expect in endgame PvE, PvP, leveling, and those special nuggets that make priests feel extra unique. Starting with endgame PvE. Now, priests are hybrids, and as a result, they're one of many classes forced to pay the hybrid tax, which is a fancy name for the idea that because a class is a hybrid, that it should be inferior to doing damage to that of a pure DPS class. Or in other words, that they should be forced to pay a tax on their DPS. So while priests technically can both heal and do DPS, just ultimately Shadow is a little bit inferior. Not saying that you absolutely cannot play a Shadow Priest, but if you're looking at this video trying to figure out whether or not this class is for you, I'd be lying to you if I said that there is an honest possibility of you playing Shadow. Realistically, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna be stuck being a healer. On the plus side, you are really damn good at it. You see, priests have the most versatility when it comes to healing in the game. They have the ability to do absorption spells, heal over time, cast single target heals, and they also get AoE heals as well with their Prayer of Healing. So while you may be stuck healing a lot of the time, at least you'll be pretty damn good at it. You also provide the unique utility of having 3 separate buffs, but we'll be getting onto that later on in our special nuggets section. Moving on to PvP. Now, PvP or priests, they actually have a few different options. While they're forced to pay the hybrid tax in PvE, it's not so much with PvP. They can actually be pretty big monsters as a result of a few different abilities. For Shadow, their Shadow form combined with the Discipline talent of Improvement or Fire makes them actually pretty tanky, as well as the fact that they can sort of heal themselves a little bit while doing damage with their Vampiric Embrace. So yeah, Shadow can be pretty nasty, but priests, I believe, truly excel at PvP as a result of being, once again, a healer. You see, healers have the ability to completely change the tide of a battle in any version of World of Warcraft, but even more so in Classic due to the fact that many classes just don't have the ability to heal themselves, and being able to keep another class alive to run in and murder things while dispelling them as well is something that a priest is very good at. On top of that, their dispels can be used for both offensive and defensive capabilities because they dispel magic, which makes them impressive as well. But while a priest is particularly good in group PvP, that doesn't mean that they're useless in 1v1. Because they have the ability to heal themselves and have the ability to do a decent amount of damage in Shadow as well, they can slowly whittle down their targets, but you're not going to see them running around instantly chunking people. It's a very different strategy with a priest. And I believe this is the perfect way to transition into the leveling portion. Priests are one of the worst classes to level in the game, which is very similar to the reason that I was talking about with PvP just now. They slowly whittle down things. They just don't do a lot of damage while leveling. You may see me wanding right here. That is a legitimate part of priest leveling. So it's not so much that you're going to die a lot because, as I mentioned, you can just heal yourself with a variety of different healing spells, but the fact of the matter is, you just don't do a lot of damage. Especially if you take a look at the initial leveling talents. A lot of priests will initially start with wand specialization, which increases your wand damage. They are the only fucking class that boosts their wand damage via talents because their actual damaging talents don't really get worthwhile until much later on. So a lot of the time, while leveling as a priest, what you'll be doing is throwing a quick shield on yourself, throwing up a big burst of damage with a dot, and then just fucking wanding and waiting for the target to slowly die, keeping yourself alive with heals and other stuff shit. And it's really fucking slow. And you are wearing cloth, so while you do have a few defensive abilities in the form of inner fire in the discipline tree, which you shouldn't while leveling, because if you're going that far into the discipline tree while leveling, what the fuck are you doing? It's gonna be really fucking slow. Insanely slow, and it's rough. It's one of those classes that I would highly recommend leveling with someone else, because as a priest, while you may be slow on your own, your ability to heal others can actually make you a lot stronger as a group than you would be individually. Certain other classes, like example, I play a warrior, I level with a priest friend of mine, we can run into a situation where there's multiple enemies, and on our own, we could maybe take on 1 or 2 at a time. But together, we were able to take on 6. It allows us to go a lot faster, and it's just a much better experience for leveling. So as a priest, I would highly recommend leveling with someone, but just know that the leveling experience overall is going to be rough. At least until you get, I'd say, around level 40 when you finally get Shadow Form. At that point, it gets a little bit better because you're actually starting to do some kind of damage. Finally, I want to talk about the special nuggets, those abilities that make priests feel extra unique. And I'll start off with the buffs. Priests actually have the ability to provide 3 unique buffs. The first being Power Word Fortitude, which increases stamina of your targets. The second is a Shadow Resistance buff, which I don't currently have on this character right now, but you're the only class that provides that as well. And on top of that, you actually, as a healing priest, have the ability to get Divine Spirit. You can only get this as a healing priest because you would need to put 21 points in the discipline tree, which means if you tried to do it as a shadow priest, you'd have to give up shadow form. So another thing that healing priests have the advantage of. And as a holy priest, you can do that because Lightwell is fucking trash. Other than that, as I mentioned, priests are the most versatile healers with absorptions, heal over time, single target, and the ability to cast heals in AoE as well with their Prayer of Healing that they get later on. But there's not really a whole lot else that I want to mention in regards to special nuggets. I guess they do get Mind Control, which is a really fun spell, but it sees very limited use. Most common use would be mind controlling people off of cliffs, which is super fun, but you don't see it used as widely in general. However, while priests don't have a ton of special nuggets that I want to talk about, they do have the absolute biggest special nugget out of any class in the entire game. It's not even fucking close. What I'm talking about is racial abilities. You see, every race obviously has their own unique racial abilities. Dwarves, for example, I have Stone Form. No other race has Stone Form. But priests have 2 unique priest racials for every race of priest. And most of them are unique. There's like a couple that overlap, I believe, like Desperate Prayer, for example, is on both dwarves and humans. This means it's a lot more important to think about what race you want to play when you're playing a priest, because it will completely change your strengths and weaknesses more than any other class. Biggest example are dwarves here. You see, dwarves, they have Desperate Prayer, which is basically an instant heal that, as you can see right now, 134 to 170, it's basically like a mini lay on hands I can cast on myself on a 10-minute cooldown. But the bigger one is Fear Ward. Fear Ward is an ability that only dwarf priests get. It's a 30-second cooldown that applies a buff that absorbs a fear effect. This is very strong in PvE. You can constantly make sure that the tanks have it on them, but it is also insanely strong in PvP. This Fear Ward works great against warriors and against warlocks, and it just makes dwarf priests capable of doing something that no other fucking class is. If you're running with a group of buddies, you have a 30-second cooldown, you can run into a situation where you say are running into a 3-on-3 and all your group members have Fear Ward on them. They can't be feared. It's fucking insane. There are tons of different unique priest racial abilities that you need to take into consideration, because as amazing as Fear Ward is, there are other ones that are interesting as well that you might want to think about. And on top of that, not only are you being more cautious as to what class you're picking with what race, but you're also going to be thinking about what faction. Because if you really want Fear Ward, you're not going to be a fucking Horde priest. You're going to be Alliance, which is going to completely change the dynamic. Because not only do you have to be on Alliance, but that means also you're going against Shamans as well, which love to fucking purge shit off you anyway, and that's something to pay attention to. So being the only class in the game with class-specific racials makes it the most impressive special nugget in the entire fucking game. What do you guys think? Do you want to play a priest? Are you currently playing a priest? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. I got lots of World of Warcraft content coming up, including the remaining classes in this series, so you're definitely not going to miss out on any of that. And as always, thank you so much for watching my video. I'm Ian from Sleep Deprivation Dozing Off, and I will catch you guys in the next video when I wake up.